Hello and welcome. I'm Maria Ressa. This is Rappler Talk. It has been an amazing day of developments. Just a short while ago, Rappler published a story that said that Mar Rojas, former Secretary Mar Rojas, is now asking Senator Grace Poe to speak, and in his words, for the unity of our country. Here in the studio with us now to react to that and to give us a perspective of where elections are is Senator Pia Cayetano, who, as many of you know, is the sister of Vice Presidential candidate Alan Peter Cayetano, the vice candidate of Mayor Rudy Duterte. Pia, it's good to have you here on
Hi,
Rappler.
Maria. I'm happy to be here.
Well, tell me, so we just posted this a little while ago. What do you think? What's your reaction to it?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want everyone to know that I'm not their spokesperson, and I just happened to be here.
Yes.
And you cornered me and said, can you give me a reaction, okay? So having said that, I caught Alan's interview with you earlier, wherein he had said that there is news that they know of that Mar is reaching out to Grace, and it was not public, and he was telling you that, but he is pretty sure this is happening. So this is pretty much, and then I come here and you show me that it's news and that Mar has actually reached out to Grace in the interest of unity and I'm using my own words, no, to come together against another candidate, and he used adjectives to describe that candidate as, in the interest of honesty, decency, transparency, etc. First of all, it validates the information that Alan has, that he told you of.
Just today, right?
Just today, and just what, hours ago?
Yes.
And I think Alan was also saying, maybe in some other interview, or I picked it up from his, I think he has a press con going on somewhere, that this has been going on actually. Like this reaching out and this discussing this issue has been going on, so it's confirmed. And I believe that
Can you explain again, since for the people who didn't hear Alan earlier,
Yes.
what exactly did he say?
Yeah, what I heard Alan say in his interview to you was that they have information that the camp of Mar, and specifically Mar, they're reaching out to Grace. So the two presidential candidates, Mar is reaching out that the two of them talk in the interest of unity to fight another candidate, knowing that this other candidate might win. And obviously they're referring to Alan's partner, Mayor Rudy Duterte. So the point that Alan was making is that they know that there's something going on between the Liberal Party and Mar and Grace's camp. As to what the reaction is from Grace's camp, I don't know. I don't know also if Alan said anything about it. All I know is about the Liberal Party and Mar reaching out to Grace.
So let's pull back on
Yeah.
this. You've also gone on the campaign trail separately.
Separately from them most of the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can you go? Let's pull back again from the details of the developments of what's happening. How would you describe these campaigns now, this election in particular?
Okay, I've personally been a candidate since 2004. So it's a good 12 years, no? And the big difference is social media. I know Alan has said that to you in his interview. My experience and his experience are very different because I was active in social media way before he was.
Yeah.
And I have to say the engagement of people has, to me, created a lot of good things, but has also created bad things. There's a lot of communication is open, access to information is open, but disinformation, I think, is just as equivalent as the information available out there. And I think it's confusing to the average person. Even to me, I have to read a couple of reports for me to get a feel of which is a fair report. And I can imagine what the average Filipino who has access to social media goes through. And in my own little way, I've tried to clarify issues. Obviously, I am biased because Alan Cayetano is my brother. But in the same way I've managed my career in politics, I always try to help people understand the issues more than confuse them.
What exactly has made the disinformation, I mean, from what you've seen, again, you've been on social media a while. You were one of the first of our lawmakers to go
Yes,
there, right?
yes.
What's different about this, and how did it become so toxic at times, right?
I'll tell you what it is. I've said it in one of my private spaces, my personal Facebook, which just has a few hundred friends, that a lot of candidates are now a product of a marketing campaign. So you now have these memes with obviously a good profile shot,
Right.
and then a one-liner about what they stand for. And because I know all the presidential and vice presidential candidates, I can tell you if it's true, if it's exag a bit, or if it's totally exag. Like, seriously, I never heard that person fight for that. And I can tell you, like, okay, they signed the bill, but they were one of 87 members of Congress who signed it. They didn't lift a finger to be sure that that passes. They didn't put their life on the line to fight for that. So that to me is misleading. It's not a lie, but it's misleading to suddenly say this person has been fighting for this, you know. So is that good? No, it's not good, because people will say, wow, what a wonderful candidate, and yung pala they didn't work for anything. On the other hand, they do have access to information that would otherwise not be easily available.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, kind of really confusing, and then people get really passionate about it, and then they start fighting. And I recently, well, almost every day I meet with youth, and I do try to explain to them, at the end of the day, be responsible, be respectful, because this was not meant to be an avenue for us to bash each other, to use hateful words. It's frustrating.
You don't, when you see that and you know it's wrong, you can't actually go in and say, no, that's
See,
a difficult thing.
I love that question. It has been difficult. You know why? Even people I've worked with on the same issues, and let's be blunt about it, women's issues.
Yeah.
Because they have other candidates, they will not listen. So I don't really have a window to explain. If you go to my public Facebook page,
Yeah.
I have my statements there.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to engage. The way, as you very well know, I engaged before. Why? Because when there was the RH debate, I would engage because it's an opportunity to explain.
Yes.
But now, when people are so passionate about the candidate that they like, and sometimes even more passionate about a candidate they dislike,
Yes.
they won't even listen to reason. So if I try to explain, well, you know what, this is what I know about this person. Before, I would even engage somebody who says, I'm saradong Katoliko, but I'd like to know why is RH acceptable to Catholics. They would listen, and then I'll get one or two bashers and say, oh, you're sinning. But now, because they're so committed to their candidates, they don't really care to listen to some other person's views, especially a person who has another candidate. So there's no point, you know, in trying to explain, which is kind of sad. In that sense, I wish I was a political analyst na lang. I wish I was a journalist na lang, because I do feel I have lessons that I'd learned that people can learn from if they had a little bit of an open mind.
Some people will say, though, that a lot of the vitriol, the anger on social media are actually sparked by the supporters of Duterte. Have you guys seen this? And
You know what? I believe that there is no camp who can honestly say they don't have a few supporters who go out of line. I've seen it from all. And then I also know that some are planted. I've seen I'm not involved in the social media, just for the record, of the Duterte Cayetano. I have my own. I'm responsible for mine, Pia Cayetano, on Facebook and on Twitter, etc. Beyond that, I'm also just an observer. And I've seen it, and I know that there have been disclaimers from the Duterte Cayetano camp that those are not our people.
Yeah.
We did not authorize them. And yeah, that's where it's sad. And that's why I always extend that extra mile to all camps. No? And then sadly nga, I can't respond kasi either way, may magtatampo, may magagalit. So it's been a limiting factor for me, except in this venue where and unfortunately, I'm not a national candidate. I mean, I'm a congressional candidate, which makes me kind of local.
Right.
So if I was national, more people would want to hear me, and then I can explain a little bit more. But I can't say this well in 160 characters or in, one or two paragraphs for Facebook. So this is good.
I want to hear your insights about what makes these elections different. We'll take it apart. But first, the question everyone asks, and I've seen this asked of you on social media, is you are a women's advocate. You were the main proponent of the RH bill that became a law. How could someone like you support Rudy Duterte?
That is so interesting, and I'm glad you're asking me. You know what? Before he opened his mouth, which he admits is a foul mouth, okay, that came from him, I went to Davao City, and again, I'm not the spokesperson. I didn't come here to speak for him, no?
Yes.
Because if there's anyone I want to campaign for, it's Alan Cayetano.
Yeah.
But you know me, I'll answer your question. I saw all the great things he did in Davao City. And what people don't know aside from, and I wrote an article about how the Mutyan ng Davao doesn't have a swimsuit competition. And feminists and women's advocates have actually twisted that and said, oh, so now you can't wear a swimsuit in Davao City? I have my right to wear a swimsuit. And I was like, whoa, that kind of went overboard, because if you look at my blog from way back, it was my 2010 campaign, and the blog is actually, it's now in my book, my Daily Race book. I wrote an article about me being a judge in Miss Davao, and I was so impressed because wala ngang swimsuit. It wasn't about you can't wear a swimsuit, because of course you can. You
Yes.
can go to the beautiful beaches in Davao and wear a swimsuit.
No, that makes sense.
The point was, though, consistent with many women advocates, is highlight the other features and talents of women.
Yes.
Let's not make it about aesthetics.
Just
Let's
this-
not
the
make it
swimsuit.
about the proportions of your body,
Right.
which I thought was amazing. And now it was twisted to be like, you're not allowed to wear a swimsuit because they're now saying that by doing so, you're the one who's calling attention to be abused. Or, I was like, whoa, that kind of went a little bit too far. So going back, my point is, I saw all the great things that he did in Davao City, including what isn't really publicized, but I also know it because I spoke to her. He has a female lawyer who's directly been in charge for many years on his advocacy for women, including paying the lawyers' fees, hiring lawyers for women who are abused. So you have this kind of person who then, when he's in the limelight, has a foul mouth. And it's
Right.
actually a little bit difficult to reconcile. And I actually have kind of like squeezed his arm, literally, like when I'm with him, I'm like, can you not? Can you not? Like, because you distract all the people who are campaigning for you, who believe in you. You distract everyone from the amazing person we know you to be when you swear and when you use your words in such a way that are degrading to women, because we know you not to be that person. It's like, yeah, we're gonna.
He refused. He didn't want to apologize for the rape comment. Did that surprise you?
It did. It did in the beginning, and then when I read the whole interview, and then when I talked to him, I understood where he was coming from. I'll make that clear, Maria, because
Yeah.
we're going to get people who say, wow, Senator Pia, you understand? It's okay. No, it's not okay. It's not okay. But I understand, and I'll tell you why. First of all, there is never an excuse for the language that he used, no? Never. But on that note, his point was, I was there in the middle of a hostage taking. I put my life on the line. I gave the order to kill these people who were killing and who were raping. So if I have a foul mouth, sorry. Ganun siya. You know what I mean? May pagka-sarcastic na parang, sorry, madumi yung bibig ko, pero this is what I had to do on the ground. And again, it doesn't excuse it. I'm not giving him excuses, and neither has Senator Alan. I mean, I got to speak up for my brother because he's the person I know personally and well. I mean, I know Mayor Duterte too, but Alan never said it was okay either. But we're just saying we understand what he was trying to say. Having said that, he's apologized, and I've also said to him, let's just apologize. The thing is, kasi he wants people to understand. That's why I go back to your first question, like Mar is calling for unity against somebody to fight because somebody who doesn't believe in honesty. This guy, honesty and transparency, he's really like, what you see is what you get, including the foul mouth, which, like me and any other mother, would prefer that he starts working on. So, but I'll say something which you haven't asked, but that is why I believe so much in Alan Cayetano being his running mate, because Alan puts him in place. And he said so himself, I will listen to Alan. Alan tells me what I should do. And Alan would be the type to, boss, medyo ano tayo dyan, no? And I volunteered also, but for now, I do my other stuff, and Alan's the one who's there, who I really feel will, if I can say this even better, you know, smooth out the rough edges, because there are really a lot of rough edges.
Alan this morning, or this afternoon, early this afternoon, actually said this is a conspiracy of some members of the elite against. In fact, I asked him whether then this is a class issue, which it isn't, because when we look at the support of Duterte, it includes
It's across the board.
A, B,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I guess in terms of where this is happening, let me rephrase it this way.
Okay.
What surprised you about this elections, aside from social media? We'll come back to social media before we close. But what else surprised you? Did it surprise you that he did so well? I mean, what else? Behavior of Filipinos.
Well, it did surprise me that he did have a foul mouth because I've sat down with him so many times. I would visit him in Davao City, ask for advice about a lot of issues, and he's such a mild-mannered guy. He really is. But the thing is, I've also attended local campaign rallies with him, where he really speaks like a man out there. How did he put it? What did he said his gangster language. I think that's his words.
Yeah.
No? And I've seen him talk that way, you know, with his mura and people laugh. And so I feel that when I first saw him address the public as an official candidate and that's when he started speaking that way, parang he needed time to transition into his local politician to national, and I think Alan has been a big influence on him because Alan always starts his day and their meetings with prayers, and Alan has been outspoken about helping mayor tone it down. And so I go back to, yeah, that surprised me, but then I can also see the transition, and I think it's a good transition.
I go back to women's issues. This is a man who puts women's empowerment, will take care of the women's issues in your mind?
Sorry, so what's the question?
The
Will
Duterte,
he?
yeah.
Will he?
Will he? In your mind, is he somebody who would protect the same things that you have worked for?
Good question. What I've seen in Davao is the most amazing local executive when it comes to women's issues. No, I cannot downplay what he has done for Davao. This would be a disservice to this man who has stood for everything women empowerment in Davao City. But I understand how, which is again going back to why it was so difficult for me to say something in one line,
Yeah.
is how I understand how confusing it would be to the general public. Like, ba't ganun yung bibig niya? Ba't ganun? And the closest I can come to an explanation is that his weakness is, he said so himself, he's a womanizer, no? But having said that, that's his business. Does it affect his ability to handle peace and order in Mindanao? Does it affect his ability to bring together the decade-long problems we've had with communism, with religious extremists in Mindanao? I don't think it does. And I've thought long and hard about this. What happens is it's a distraction. And I've told him that. And again, I bring it back to Alan Cayetano. Alan Cayetano can keep him in place and say, boss, let's set that aside, prioritize tayo. You don't have to tell, you have to, sorry, let me correct that. You have to correct your choice of words because instead of getting the right message. Because if not for that, so many people, more people would even be supporting him, more than he already has.
Yes. We have several questions on social media, on Facebook. These are similar to what I've asked you already. Why has Pia Cayetano been quiet about Duterte's abusive language about women? How do you really feel about Duterte and his treatment of women, and why are you supporting him? Is there anything you want to add to this?
I'll add. Let's clarify that I have not been silent. No, go to my Facebook, go to Twitter. Was it? I don't know. It's in between or just before the vice presidential debates were aired. I tweeted and I was interviewed. So I have not been silent, but that's the thing with social media. If you weren't online yesterday or at the same time, you won't. And again, in the same way that I'm not gonna say, hey Maria, how come I didn't hear you say anything? I'll do my research. I'll check also, did you say something or not, you know? And then again, I also explained that ask anyone who is a responsible member of any organization or corporation. If your principal or your boss or even a high-ranking colleague says something na, oops, medyo mali yata yun, is the first thing you're gonna do go on social media and, hey, my boss just, I mean, everyone's gonna say to you, medyo the thing you should do is handle it internally, right? So for everyone who knows me, who has seen how I have fought for women's issues, know that I will never turn my back. I never change my position, and neither do my standards change. But you may not understand how I need to deal with it to be effective. Can you imagine if somebody like me, who has a direct line to Mayor Duterte, started bashing him online, joining my fellow women and saying, that's foul, which I have. I have said it's foul. Do you think I'm the first person he wants to come to for advice? Nope. So this guy is the front runner. Do I want to be a positive influence on his life, or do I just want to be one of the bashers? I've always been supportive of any president who has been elected by this country, whether I ran with that president or not. So my objective is always to be effective. That is what I am. I am an effective leader. And I may take flack for it in between, but at the end of the day, I am effective.
Some people may not remember this, but during the controversy about Grace Poe and her citizenship and whether she could even stay in the Senate,
yeah.
in the Senate, at the Senate Electoral
Tribunal.
Tribunal,
Yeah.
right? You were the swing vote, and instead of voting for Alan, you voted for Grace.
What do you mean, Alan?
I
mean,
instead of voting against Grace,
you
which
and I
is a
understand
vote
each other
for
because-
Alan.
yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
let's restate that, and you can see this social media. Please post that story. You can look at this. Pia was the swing vote that allowed Grace
to retain her
to
seat.
retain her seat in the Senate, that then laid the groundwork for the Supreme Court case. It was essentially a vote for Grace,
Yes.
which then can be seen as a vote against Alan.
Against Alan's candidacy, because at
Correct.
that time, gosh, I can't even remember the chronology. At that time, he was a vice presidential candidate. He was a vice presidential candidate.
Certainly.
So what's your question?
So certainly, it seems like you voted against the interests of your brother at that point. I suppose the question is, and I may have gone into it, is that if your brother is doing something that you see wrong, I guess how important are principles to you?
Yeah. Well, okay, a number of things I want to say about that. Number one is Alan and I have always voted independently. We discuss. Sometimes, if the opportunity arises, we discuss and we debate in public, or we discuss and debate in private. Rarely do we end up disagreeing, but there have been times that we have disagreed, and that's on record in the Senate, no? In the case of Grace, Alan is not a member of the Senate Electoral Tribunal. I am. I
Yes.
was and I am.
Yes.
And therefore, as far as I was concerned, it's my decision that matters. I never had a chance to really seek him out and ask him, because my view was, it's my decision, no?
And now I'm remembering it, right? It was whether or not a foundling.
Yes, the issue was, and I was going to get to that. The main issue there was whether a foundling would be presumed a natural-born citizen, because the requirement of the Constitution is that a natural-born citizen, you have to be a natural-born citizen to be a senator. And actually a president,
Right?
Diba? As chairman of the Committee on Children, I felt that it was very important that I look into the legal issues, the constitutional issue of the rights of a foundling. And I mean, I can go into this another time. This is worth
Yes.
a whole legal discussion.
because
But
this
my
is interesting to me.
conclusion was,
Yeah.
I'll protect the rights of a foundling, okay? It was legal and political. And the reason for that is, if it was purely legal, then the members of the Senate Electoral Tribunal should have been lawyers only. And so that put me in a very difficult position, because I was the only senator lawyer. So I had to ask myself, do I decide just as a lawyer, or do I also use my political experience? And so I had to use both. And I felt that I have to also take into consideration the rights of a foundling. Was it clear-cut? No, it wasn't. You can look at all the legal debates. You have
Absolutely.
legal luminaries for all sides saying yes to the rights of a foundling, yes to the rights of Grace Poe to run, and totally the other side. But the bottom line is, it was my decision to make, and I made that decision. The funny thing is, Alan disagreed, no? He came out later on
did. Yeah,
to say
he
that
does
he disagreed. And then Mayor Duterte at that time, who wasn't a presidential candidate, came out and said, precisely because Grace po is declared a Filipino, I will run because I cannot accept an American. And I was
Right.
like, and then somebody at one point tweeted, scripted ba yun? Sinadya ba? And I was like, this is too good to be true. I mean, this is too unbelievable to be real. I never knew those things would happen.
It was interesting. And again, if you're on social media, you can check. Rappler just tweeted the context for this, and maybe you can answer this now. The question was Pia Cayetano the deal breaker in 5-4 Senate Electoral Tribunal vote for Grace Poe last year? And I think you said yes, you were the deal breaker.
Well, I mean, I'm one of those who voted 5, so
Yes.
if they consider me the deal breaker,
The swing vote,
then-
I suppose, is what. So let's go back. Let me wrap some of this stuff up. Social media, you talked about how.
Before we leave,
Go.
I want to emphasize, you didn't ask it, but it's
Go-
out
go
there.
ahead.
This is precisely my point, why I personally, I can't speak for Alan, believe that people should be chosen based on their views, their experience, their integrity, and what they stand for, and not because they have, and not be disqualified because they have the same name. This is my whole position on when people ask me, what about this dynasty? I'm like, well, honestly, it's been more of a burden to me because I have to keep answering that question. But Alan and I have fought so many different battles. So if you want to disqualify one of us just because we're related, then you lose one of us, which I feel we have done serious contribution to legislation in this country.
So let's go to social media. This is, would you agree that this is the first social media elections?
I did a whole campaign with social media, but again, you will recognize that I was one of the few.
Yeah.
So to say that 2010 was, a social media base or social media played a significant part, maybe in my own little world it did, but significantly, no, this is it. You know why? Traditional media people will still say, and I think revenue-wise, it's still in traditional media, no? And
Of course.
I think I'm one of the politicians who's been all over the country, mountains, by land, by walking, by bike. And it's true, because of lack of infrastructure, there may not be social media, and there is no social media in those places. But having said that, for those who do have access, social media is faster, more information. Again, sadly, disinformation too.
Yeah,
No?
yeah.
And I think that's a growth process. That's a maturity process where, those who are professionally in the business try to contain that, and it's not a matter of being the first, but being the first with reliable news.
Information, yeah.
But I think the general public has to learn from that too, diba? So yeah, there's a big shift to that. But again, if I can use an example, okay? I'll use Alan as an example. A lot of people have seen Alan in traditional media as the fighter, right? Because
Right.
they air live the investigation that he's been in. Fast forward, it's an election season, and I've seen other candidates come up with these memes that they're the voice of education, they're the voice of the youth. And I'm like, what has this person done? So I Google myself, I check it out. And there has not been anything that this person did more than any other congressman did, which is sign a bill.
Yeah.
And yet Alan wrote this bill on Scholars ng Bayan, rallied with students to protest the decrease in the budget of education under the Aquino administration, filed a bill, sponsored it, and fought for a 9,000 peso increase for teachers. And we didn't write a meme about that, And suddenly, other candidates are like the voice of education. So it kind of changes things, where people can claim credit, where credit is not due. And then it reminds you that, yeah, this is a platform that you have to use wisely and educate people also.
I guess now, so let's pull out and let's talk about the Filipino public, the Filipino voter, what you've learned on the campaign trail. How would you describe where we are today with social media, with disinformation,
Yeah,
with
yeah.
greater empowerment?
First of all, I feel that Filipinos are very opinionated when it comes to their candidates, which is good. I think the time it's not gone, but it's going away from sabi ng barangay captain namin, sabi ng mayor namin, sabi ng governor, it's still there, okay? Don't get me wrong, they have sway. You know, I mean, especially if you have a good mayor, a good governor, good barangay captain, of course, in the same way you'd listen to your parent, you'd listen to your local official. But not anymore. If you don't care personally about what this person stands for, then his opinion won't matter. And now what will matter? That's the question.
Right.
What did you hear on the news? What then was validated on social media? Because parang people also feel that what they see on the news, totoo kaya yon or press con lang, and then they'll try to validate it in social media. And then that's where I come back to see, then you have these memes and this person is the poster child of a cause that, wow, inimbento lang nila yon in the last 3 months. Mm-hmm. So then, and I see that. So on the one hand, my campaign for Alan is biking all over the country. And because Mayor Duterte has such a strong support all over the country, I swear. And in the beginning, when we'd like Duterte Cayetano, I wouldn't see the instant connect. Mm-hmm. And I would say, kapatid ako ni Alan, like, oo nga. But now, because they love Mayor Duterte and they have seen the attacks on him, I think it's resonating with them, the campaign that, well, whether you like him or not, Alan is a good guy to partner with him because Alan is solid. He's not disliked, no? But he is a person who does well with this guy who most likely will be the president of the country. So you want Alan because of what he stands for, but also because his partnership with this person, how he can make this person a better president.
What do you make of the surveys? Alan himself has said that it would be a miracle for him to win.
Yeah. Surveys. They tell you something, that's for sure. You cannot just disregard it and say, wala yan, no? And I think that's where Alan is coming from. But the reality is, with a case like this where you have his partner with such a strong base, and his partner's campaign being, I need Alan, we don't know, no? That could really swing in Alan's favor. Having said that, I do want to say, because people have asked me, how did that happen? No? How did Alan end up lagging behind?
Yep.
And you know what? I have to say this about my brother. When he decided that Mayor Duterte is the man who can bring change to our country, drastic change. Aminado sila, it's drastic change. Clearly, Alan is always saying, if what you want is a little bit of the same, then this is where you go, because that's really not what we're trying to do, you know? So when people say we're a little bit scared, yeah, because change is scary. That's what Alan has been saying. Now, what about Alan's own campaign? Truth is, I think because he was so passionate about his president, his own campaign, he sacrificed his own campaign. Not intentionally, but he's had to speak up for Mayor Duterte. He's had to help Mayor Duterte clarify his vision for the Philippines. When Mayor Duterte says, I'm gonna bring back Joma season, Alan had to explain it. No, what he's trying to say is, let's have peace once and for all. Oh, kakusapin ko yung mga MILF. Oh, kaibigan niya. No. What he's trying to say is, let's bring we're all brothers and sisters here. So that's what Alan's had to do. And he stands by it. He's like, well, if we get this guy elected, I'll be happy and I'll be by him, whatever happens.
So we started this with the Senator, Grace Poe and Mar Rojas perhaps getting together.
Has anything
against,
happened
right?
since then?
Not yet, no. I guess we'll end with this, your best and worst case scenario for Monday. We're only a few days away.
First of all, like Alan, we are God-fearing and believers of our country's our destiny as a country, as a people, is in God's hands. No? I mean, as Filipinos, we claim that we are God's people. And whoever candidate wins, no? I have mine, somebody else has theirs. It's clear who my candidate is. I really hope, my best case scenario is we have a peaceful turnover to the next president and vice president. That's my best case scenario. My worst case scenario, I want it to be the same. A peaceful turnover. That's what it should be, and that's what we should all stand for, diba? Every Filipino should fight for that it is peaceful and that we hold our officials accountable, because everybody has something to say about the other guy's candidate. Ganito siya, ganito siya. Okay, hold them accountable, but let's have a peaceful transition into the next 6 years.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thanks for doing this, Pia.
Pleasure.
We've been speaking with Senator Pia Cayetano. She is also the sister of Vice Presidential candidate Alan Peter Cayetano, but a fierce women's advocate and one of the principal authors of the RH law. Watch the whole thing if you haven't seen it. Stay tuned. We're going to be live at the top of the hour, and we're going to go straight through till 9 p.m. Join us on Facebook. Join us on Twitter. Stay tuned. Bye-bye.